center of global governance, now in the 21st century, stands a new international institution, the Group of 20. There have been 8 summits so far, and the Prime Minister of Spain has been at every one, as has the Prime Minister of Canada, and the President of Mexico, and Brazil, and Argentina, too. The story of the G20 is one that I think is close to our hearts. It was a new international institution created because of a financial crisis. The kind of financial crisis those in Spain lived through during the past few years. The kind of financial crisis that Canadians have coped with again and again since 1945. The last financial crisis we really had came in 1994, when we had just begun a new partnership with a brand new neighbor speaking Spanish, not Spain as now, but Mexico, with the North American Free Trade Agreement, which joined us and our friends in the United States in the middle in a new North American community. So we began 1994 with great hope for all the benefits that free trade would bring. But then as the year ended, December 1994, Mexico experienced a financial crisis. And it just didn't stay in Mexico. It hurt Canada very hard. At the end of the 1990s, there was another financial crisis. This one started in Thailand. In Thailand, real estate developers had been speculating, building villas and golf courses, and then the boom went bust, and the country ran out of money. But this time it wasn't just one country. Pretty soon Indonesia suffered a financial crisis as a result of the one in Thailand. Then Korea, then Russia, then for a moment almost the United States. But then Brazil went bankrupt in the autumn of 1998. Then Turkey, then Argentina. So it became clear that we lived in a world that was much more interconnected. And we needed a new international institution where finance ministers and central bank governors could come together and try and understand these connections and prevent the next financial crisis. The first 3 G20 meetings were hosted by the Canadian Finance Minister, Paul Martin. But the 5th was hosted in Mexico. Because Canada knew that in this new world of the 21st century, it wasn't just the old established powers that knew how the world worked. They needed to understand equally how the rising emerging powers of the new world, like Mexico then, were operating their economies, because it mattered for how well we did. That G20 worked well for several years. But despite this accomplishment, by the autumn of 2008, the world was faced with a bigger, faster global financial crisis. This one was really different. The old one started in Mexico, Thailand. This one started in the United States. So it quickly spread around the world. And George Bush decided that to deal with it, he needed to call leaders together. And he chose the leaders of the G20 to have that first summit meeting. The leaders agreed that because the private sector was no longer creating demand for our economies, governments had to step in and spend, altogether on a very large scale, and if the deficit so went up, so be it. It is, I think, important to ask the G20 governments to conduct their own accountability assessments so they can keep track of how well they're implementing the promises they make. Which is why I and my group spend a lot of time as independent academic outsiders assessing how well the G20 leaders keep the promises they've made. We found that at the first few summits, when the crisis was very big, they complied with their commitments quite well. Then their performance dropped, but in the past few years, it's come back up. So on the whole, when these G20 leaders make commitments at a summit, we can be confident that on the whole, these are promises that they will keep. In that way, it is an effective center of global governance. There's other issues that the G20 has, I think, wisely taken up. For the first time at St. Petersburg summit, we saw the G20 address the important issue of income inequality. Back in North America, Barack Obama, the president, is very concerned about how the top 1% are getting more and more of the money, and the middle class is being hollowed out. And that indeed is a problem in most G20 countries. How do we improve youth employment? It's a problem not just in some of the G20 countries, but in most. What we do know is that most G20 governments don't have the money to create jobs directly. So how can we move to private sector-led growth? One way is by giving corporations the confidence to start spending their money to hire more young people. Another is to have governments create a better environment so young people can create their own jobs, startups, young entrepreneurs. And that's one way forward that we can look to. But the one thing we do know so far after 8 summits is that this is a club of the old established powers, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the emerging ones, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Indonesia. We do know that equality between the established and the emerging powers is not just an advertising slogan. When we look inside the G20, we see cases where Canada can combine with its partners in Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina to say to Europeans, no, that's a dumb idea. And even though those countries are much more powerful, actually win. And we know on many occasions that the leader of Canada and Spain have stood together to say, look, this is the way forward. So the question, I guess, now is, looking ahead, what do we want the G20 to do for us over the next year? And then what do we know about the G20 so we can come up with evidence-based answers to tell it how to do a better job for us.
Many thanks, Professor Kirchhoff, for your interesting speech. At this moment, I will do some comments and questions. In the Appendix A of your paper, there is an interesting chart about G20 summit performance created by Julia Kulik, member of your team of experts. One dimension to measure the performance is the direction setting. You include 2 core values in this dimension, democracy and individual liberty. Why have you chosen these 2 core values and not others as quality of public services, poverty and inequality reduction, or creation of decent employment? Other interesting contribution in your work is the assessment of the level of summit compliance. It's placed in the Appendix C. I would like to know more about the process of assessment. Which indicators do you use to evaluate the level of compliance of each country? Do you have local collaborators to do that? Do you directly analyze local mass media and official documents? The concept of systematically significant states is very important in the definition of current global governance. Nevertheless, there are voices against the current composition of countries participating in G20 summits. For example, the American Enterprise Institute has suggested that countries like Malaysia, Norway, Singapore, or Switzerland need to have a permanent seat in these meetings in replace of other members. They look as very globalized countries, but their capabilities are limited in other dimensions. Do these voices represent a try to modify the nature of the concept of systematically significant states? You have mentioned that the current format of G20 summits helps to facilitate exchange of point of view among global leaders. At the same time, you have said that it's possible to detect a special sense of empathy among them. The spontaneous applause received by Lula da Silva by the rest of the leaders in his last summit is an example of that. Have you found some special personality traits required to exercise the leadership in this new scenario of global governance? A key component of the current global governance is the International Monetary Fund, a typical Bretton Woods institution. Some emerging countries, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico, among others, have demanded the transformation of this organization to better include the new distribution of power around the world. Their complaint also has other elements. Some of these countries have denounced that International Monetary Fund analyzed and managed world economies only on the basis of orthodox points of view. Actually, the choice of this option has deepened crises supposed to be solved by its intervention. Greece and Portugal are near examples of this trend. Other economic voices and proposals are not listened in IMF. Is the G20 order even more neoliberal than the previous one led in 2008? I want to know your point of view about the future of G20 summits and their power to shape a new international order. Nobody can deny that G20 acted as an excellent reactive power to manage the crisis of 2008 and 2009. Decisions taken at London Summit are the best example of this feature. Nonetheless, G20 was not able to preview the fiscal crisis in the south of Europe. In relation to this, is this new emerging governance more reactive than proactive? Is the short time shared by global leaders in these summits the cause of a less developed proactive vision? Canada's theoretical criterion of globalization that benefits all, to think about the role of G20, is a major contribution for the shaping of this new international governance. However, decisions taken at G20 summits, since Toronto to St. Petersburg, have obliged many countries to adopt public policies against the rise of important portions of the population. The persistence of the European crisis could be considered a consequence of this. Is the G20 the keeper of small but powerful groups interested in the consolidation of the financial phase of capitalism in detriment of its industrial, innovative phase?